The day after Reform's chairman dramatically resigned, the Tories think that Reform are imploding. Are they? We're going to ask one of Reform's newest members, Tim Montgomerie, for the inside track.
Reform can still put this right. But as I've already said, yes, Zia is a loss, and I can't really quarrel with your assessment that he didn't leave in the best of ways. I wish he picked up the phone to me and other people, and people who genuinely, I think, like him and would have advised him, just pause.
Well, blimey O'Reilly or any other such phrases, stone the crows, Gordon, because quite a lot has happened in the last 24 hours. I was with you in this studio yesterday. We were singing Reform's praises. Everything was going so well.
And we were talking about how the Tories were fighting with each other and it was all going wrong for them.
Silly
and it was
Tories.
playing into Reform's hands.
Yeah,
and
shows so much we know.
Oh dear.
So basically, Zia Yusuf, the chairman, sensationally resigns. You and Tony Diver do a little emergency record because I was in my youngest child's parents' evening, finding out how well her art and textiles and other subjects were going. And then I actually raced home because I thought, I really want to see Farage's show on GB News and see what he's got to say about this. Then that's a bit of a dilemma because can he, as a politician, discuss breaking news? And they sorted it out by having Martin Daubney interview Farage on Farage's own show. Should we just have a listen to how he reacted to the news for the first time publicly?
He really is in a class of his own. And frankly, I'm sad that he's going. I'm sad for the party because he leaves a gap. I'm sad for him, actually, because I spoke to him yesterday morning and I felt, he's really he's kind of had enough of all of this. Then Sarah Pochin asked that question in the Commons. He then put a sort of slightly intemperate tweet out. That I could tell reading that tweet, I just thought, he's not coming in tomorrow. So he disagreed. He thought Sarah shouldn't have asked a question about the Burka. And there's a debate around that, is it a main priority, etc. But look, I'm sad. And I think public life has lost somebody very talented and somebody who's come from within the ethnic minorities that is intensely patriotic about this country. That's a loss.
And then we woke up to the news. You woke up very early to the news because you did a snap analysis. What time did you get up for that?
3-ish.
3-ish to respond to the fact that Labour, again shock horror, won that Hamilton by-election in Scotland. Again, that was unexpected. We thought the SNP would be duking it out with Reform and that Reform would come second. In fact, they came third. So to discuss all this, we are joined by, couldn't be a more perfect guest, Tim Montgomerie. Once a Tory, now a Reformer. Little bit of buyer's remorse this morning or not?
Well, look, this is not a good morning for Reform in terms of Zia leaving. I've defected Camilla to Reform 6 months ago. And during that time, Zia is probably the person I've got closest to in Reform.
Yes.
I really found the times we spent together incredibly creative. I learned so much from him. And when the news came yesterday, it was like a sucker punch. It really was. I feel very sad about it. And I spoke to Nigel Farage this morning. Nigel is very upset about it as well. This is not, to some people have presented, a falling out between Nigel and Zia. This is a falling out between Zia and other people in the party. Zia was trying to professionalise the party. He was a businessman, a young man in the hurry. He put noses out of joint. Some because he was doing the right thing and they were obstacles. Some because he probably was a little bit insensitive to the nature of running a voluntary organisation. But I'm very disappointed and sad that he's gone. And Nigel needs to now put in place and find someone who can make sure that the professionalisation, the modernisation of the party continues.
Just to clarify that, we know he fell out with Rupert Lowe, but who else has he fallen out with?
I think there have been... He was responsible for the vetting, for example, of candidates in the party. And he has taken a very tough line to ensure that Reform have the kind of council and other candidates that meet standards of competence. They don't have any skeletons in the cupboard. How many times have parties led by Nigel Farage in the past been dogged by finding people in the membership who've got skeletons in their cupboards?
Sure.
And Zia was dealing with that. He upset people in the process. And then I think in his desire to get things done, to introduce structure and process to the party. He did really put noses out of joint, and he probably could have done that better sometimes, like all of us could. He probably was a bit hard sometimes, a businessman who is used to sort of running on sort of command and control structures, and a voluntary political party requires different skills of persuasion and patience. And that may have been part of the problem.
Sure.
Just before we get on to the how much of an effect this is going to have for reform, it feels like you're saying that the reason he went was more to do with stuff that was going on behind the scenes and clashes of personalities than the row over the Burka ban, even though the timing of his departure and some of the things that he said in the last couple of days suggested that that was the reason he'd gone, or particularly at that time. So what's your view on how much it was to do with the Burka row and how much it was to do with other stuff that was already going on?
Well, given what he tweeted about calling Sarah Pochin's question dumb, it's not exactly a secret that he wasn't happy with what the Reform's new MP for Runcorn had asked the Prime Minister at PMQs on Wednesday. And he has faced extraordinary abuse in social media.
Yeah.
Because he's Muslim.
Because he's Muslim, because it's not a white, skin isn't white.
Yes.
And most of that, I think, has come from well outside Reform, but it's been ugly, really ugly. And Camilla, you're a woman, and
Yes.
the misogyny on social media is
I
pretty
know.
extraordinary. But the racism is an extra dimension, I think, sometimes.
Look, I had a very interesting experience last week, and I was trying to work it out because Zia was meant to come on my GB News show.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing the round that morning, and then he pulled out at the last minute. I was trying to get to the bottom of it, but I got the impression that he wasn't happy. He's wrestled with his public role, I would say. He's had to go onto the airwaves, and, he worked at Golden Stacks, and he started up his own business. And I think he is extremely fond of Nigel. I'd gone in for a meeting at Reform's HQ in London a couple of weeks before that, and I kind of witnessed this quite sort of fatherly son relationship between those two. So I agree with you entirely, Monty, not that you'd be misleading us anyway, but I agree with you entirely that this isn't about beef between Zia and Nigel. But when he pulled out the show, I thought...
No, just to say, speaking to Nigel this morning, he was telling me they spoke multiple times every day.
No, I know.
And this was an incredibly close... So Nigel's almost lost a limb, a political
I agree
limb
with you.
in some ways.
And it was funny because I had this meeting with Yusuf and then Nigel sat in on it. And I kind of thought, was he happy with that, the chairman? I don't know. Anyway, the three of us just spoke generally about how it was all going, the Telegraph's coverage, GB News and all the rest of it. And then when he pulled out of the show, which I thought it was strange. Why wouldn't you want to come onto GB News the week before a by-election that you're hoping at least to either win or come second in?
Yeah.
And then I kind of got wind that he was finding a lot of the discussion around Rupert Lowe problematic because whenever the Lowe row is mentioned, he gets a load of abuse. I actually wasn't going to ask him about Rupert Lowe. Interviewed the guy twice, once for us here, once for GB News. He didn't make the best fist of it. And no one's talking about Lowe. He did go from Rupert to Hoopert. So I have sympathy. However, I will say this. I think the manner of his departure is very petulant. I don't think he should have worded that ex-post in the way that he did. Oh, this isn't a good use of my time anymore. After 11 months and all of that loyalty that he has built up between him and Farage and others, he's just sold the party down the river. He's blown it up by basically suggesting, I don't believe, and I was its chairman, that they're fit to govern. Why did he have to flounce out so dramatically? It's amateurish.
Well, look, let's not overstate it. The party's not blown up, or this is not blown anything up. The fundamental facts of British politics are the same. I didn't hear your podcast yesterday, for which I apologise. I do normally listen, but I didn't listen yesterday. But the fact is that the Tories won't be forgiven for 5-10 years. Just like when the Liberal Democrats fell out of the coalition, the British people are forgiving, but they need time. They need a political party to reform, learn its lessons, and I don't think the Conservative Party have begun to do that properly yet. And then before our eyes, Labour Party is failing in multiple ways. We have a Prime Minister who really doesn't know what he believes and what he wants to do. So at the same time, we're seeing the two main political parties fail. Reform has to step into the gap. There's still an opportunity for him. Nigel Farage is still, I think, the most formidable politician in British politics. Look at the calendar on the wall. There's still 3 years to go to the next general election. Reforms can still put this right. But as I've already said, yes, Zia is a loss. And I can't really quarrel with your assessment that he didn't leave in the best of ways. I wish he'd picked up the phone to me and other people, and people who genuinely, I think, like him and would have advised him, just pause, think about how you, if you're going to go, sleep on it. He may have slept, he may have wanted to do this for a little while, and maybe he has slept on it a number of times, but sleep on it and ensure that what you have built over the last 11 months, 12 months, you don't be proud of that and don't ruin it by
It just portrays,
behaving in you
portrays
called it petulant, I think.
a lack of seriousness. I mean, I'm writing my column now. It's a bit of a rant, I've got to be honest. Never has the country faced more of a crisis, and yet seems to be presented with an unserious political class across all of the major parties. I'm sorry, but that is the current perception among the voters. Reform are trying to be something different to the uni party, of amateurishness and at times incompetence.
I suspect the damage from this is going to be, well, twofold. One, that Zia Yusuf's tweet, where he effectively said Reform are not a party he thinks should govern, I imagine that's going to be on posters in the general election in 2029, paid for by Labour and the Tories, that for one. But also, Reform sort of managed to get over the Rupert Lowe row, I think, quite quickly, partly, I think, because most people didn't really know who Rupert Lowe was. But surely there will come a point where if Reform keeps on having these very public internal, blow-ups, there is a danger that people who are, Reform curious might start saying, actually, can I take these people seriously? And that's a danger, isn't it?
It's a big danger. And look, and Reform is in a vulnerable position now because of this departure. And there's lots of speculation online at the moment of who might take his place. And my advice to Nigel Farage, as he thinks about this, is Zia Yusuf was a high-risk, high-stakes, high-rewards, high-downsides candidate. And it worked for a while and then stopped working. I think what Reform needs, as it builds forward, is a period of stability, building on rock. And choose someone you know very well. Choose someone who understands politics. Choose someone who is collegiate, and choose someone who has, been around the block a few times, has taken some knocks, and can survive what we all know is a pretty bloody business in politics.
Tim Montgomerie.
If you knew about my personal finances and how I organise my life, Camilla, you would not want me near anywhere running a political party.
But you're politically experienced. You have lots of friends across the ideological divide.
Yeah.
You've been around the block. You founded Conhome. You helped found with Ian Duncan Smith the Centre for Social Justice. So you know the media.
Yeah.
You understand the problems on the ground. You're friendly with Farage. You're friendly with Badenoch.
Well, not quite so much.
Well, you could be the brokerer of a deal,
No. Well,
we all know that.
I'm sure you have my best interest at heart, Camilla.
Are you ruling yourself out, or is it?
Oh, definitely. Honestly, I'm not joking about my. I had some very serious mental health problems during lockdown.
Yeah.
I regard myself as a journalist now.
But you're a bridge. You're the ultimate righty bridge between Reform and the Conservatives. And as we've witnessed, and this is what you wrote this morning, Gordon, very astutely. In fact, you said this in a prescient manner yesterday on the Daily Tea. What we've learnt from the Hamilton by-election is that if the right unites, they can beat the SNP and Labour in Scotland.
Yeah, see, this is something I've changed my mind on, Camilla, because it's like, I don't know where you stand on the lifting the two-child
I
benefit.
think it's an idiotic idea because the benefits bill has grown by 86 billion in the last decade, and it's completely unaffordable, and 6 in 10 Brits oppose it. So it isn't a populist policy, it's an unpopular policy.
Yeah. Well, okay, you've made your position clear, as you always do. Why I disagree with you is because Nigel Farage is often accused of just playing to the gallery. You're right, it's an unpopular policy on the face of it. But what he's good at is identify an issue where he knows he can change public opinion. and you probably know from the Centre for Social Justice, 59% of the people who will benefit from this policy are actually in work. Their income is topped up by benefits, but these are people who are doing the right thing. They're trying to work. They're trying to put food on the family of their table by getting up at goodness knows what hours to do jobs that probably none of us around this table would particularly want to do. And Nigel Farage thinks those are the sort of people that make this country work. Why I don't believe in a deal anymore between the Tories is that Nigel Farage has an ability to move beyond ideological boundaries, like when he supported the renationalisation of British Steel. He's able to talk potentially about building more council housing, because that's, I think, the only way we're going to solve our housing crisis. He's able to move beyond where I think the Tories would be. And that's why he's picking up Labour voters. Yeah. Can you imagine? Well, the Tory party got 6% in the by-election. Reform got 26% in Hamilton. You know, a really traditional left-wing area. And I think if the Reform did an alliance with the Tories now, they would kill off that sort of ability to reach into seats like Hamilton and Runcorn. So I understand why the Tories might want it, sorry, Gordon, but I don't understand why Reform would want it.
Yeah, so you're basically saying that whereas we might say 26% plus 6% adds up to 32, which would beat Labour, you're saying that 26% would actually go down if they did a deal with the Tories, because a lot of people would be turned off by that.
I think that's right, yeah.
Well, that's a fair point. I have to ask you, just going back to the Burka thing, what's your understanding of what was known about that question being asked in Parliament, given how sort of much of a problem it seems to have caused? You know, was Sarah Pochin put up to it by Nigel? Did she tell Nigel? What happened?
I don't know all the details, but I do know from Anna Mikalova. She said that she was briefed about
a fellow journalist, formerly of this parish. Carry on.
Was briefed about the question beforehand. So there were certainly people in Reform who knew that was the question that was going to be, and
had told journos that was going to happen.
But didn't seem to have told Zia Yusuf.
No.
Or did tell him and he was overruled. I don't know. We're in the realms of speculation
just on that
here.
Point, by the way, the other thing that was completely infantile yesterday was people laughing on the front bench. Agree with her or disagree with her, it's perfectly acceptable to have a public debate in this country about the burqa when, as she pointed out, other European countries have banned it.
Yeah.
We're now in the realm of public discourse has become sort of somebody suggests something that somebody else disagrees with and they're laughed out of the Commons. It's pathetic.
There's an incivility to our public discourse which worries me a great deal. Having said that, and I agree it's a completely legitimate freedom of speech issue, when the people of Runcorn voted for Sarah to become their MP, was that the question they would have wanted their newly elected MP to ask first? I'm not sure it would have been. I thought there would have much more pertinent and relevant would have been a question about the cost of living or about the small boats crisis or something like that. And that's the challenge for Reform. What are their key messages going to be? You know, we know in politics you have to have a certain level of message discipline. You have to communicate big themes repeatedly and in imaginative ways. Did we really need to raise that issue? A very important new MP in Parliament, the first woman MP for Reform. Was that the right question to ask? I'm not sure tactically.
No.
Interesting. Is there any? Maybe it's too early to know this, but is there any sort of feeling within Reform that the timing of Zia Yusuf's resignation might have cost second place in that by-election, maybe even first place? There were only a few hundred votes in it. You know, he resigned when there were still several hours of voting left. Do you think it had a material effect?
I don't, to be honest. I think I've tried to be really candid with both of you today, and I'm not diminishing the significance of this resignation, but I don't think many people in the country know who he is. I think it broke at about 6 o'clock last night. Most people wouldn't have heard about it. The likelihood that hundreds of people would have heard about it and actually changed their vote on the basis of this is unlikely. So it was ill-advised for him to resign on a by-election day. At least wait till polling stations have closed. But actually, in all honesty, I don't think it would have changed many votes.
Tim Montgomerie, you have been candid. You always are, and we are grateful for it. So thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Tea.
Thank you for having me.